I paid for the entire trip, and still my sister-in-law treated me like a complete stranger. Even worse, she made a point of erasing me from every single family photo. My name is Mark, I'm 47 years old, and I'm writing this from a hotel room in Key West, Florida. This was supposed to be a relaxing family vacation, but it's been everything, except that. I came with my wife Rachel, who's 42, her parents, Henry and Martha, a lovely elderly couple, 76 and 70, and Rachel's sister, Kim, 38. We've only been here for 2 days, but I'm already exhausted. Not physically, I'm emotionally drained. And honestly, I don't know how much longer I can pretend everything's okay. Rachel and I have been married for 10 years. We have a good life. We work hard, we earn well, and we travel often, at least 3 times a year. We never had kids, and we enjoy the freedom that gives us. Lately, we've been taking her parents on some of those trips, especially since Henry's health has been declining. Martha can't take care of him alone, so whenever we can, we bring them along. This time, the request was special. Henry wanted to go back to Key West, where he and Martha spent their honeymoon. He mentioned it might be the last big trip of his life. The moment I heard that, I knew I couldn't say no. I paid for everything, happily. Flights, hotel, meals, tours. I booked everything in advance, carefully planned every detail. But this time, Rachel told me her sister Kim wanted to come along. According to her, Kim had been feeling down because she hadn't had a vacation in years, between the kids and financial struggles. The truth? She asked us to take her. She hinted that she couldn't afford it, and I, like a fool, said, "No problem. Let's all go together. That's what family is for." I had no idea what was coming. From the moment we stepped off the plane, Kim made it her mission to exclude me from absolutely everything. But it was on the very first day, with the very first photo, that I realized something was wrong. We had just checked into the beachfront resort. It was beautiful. I wanted to capture the moment. But before I could say anything, Kim grabbed her phone and said, "Let's take a picture, just the 4 of us, okay? Mom, Dad, Rachel, and me. Mark, can you take it for us?" Me? I just stood there, frozen, pretending it was fine. I took the picture. I smiled, but inside something already started to ache. I thought it was just a kids with their parents keepsake on something harmless. But it wasn't. That was just the beginning. She turned it into a personal campaign to make sure I didn't appear, not in photos, not in memories, not as part of the family, and with each passing hour, I felt less like a person and more like I was invisible. To understand what's going on now, you probably need to know what the dynamic with Kim has always been like. I've known Rachel for 12 years, and from the start, her relationship with her sister was complicated. It wasn't loud or full of fights, you know? It was the opposite. Quiet, tense. One of those relationships where one speaks and the other lowers her head. From the beginning, Kim struck me as bitter, but I tried to let it go. The first time we met, I remember she looked me up and down and said, "Oh, so you're Mark." Not what I pictured. I laughed, a bit awkwardly, but inside I thought, what exactly did she picture? Over time, I realized Kim never liked sharing the spotlight with anyone. She grew up being the center of her parents' attention. Rachel was the quiet one, the obedient one. Kim was the loud one, the one who threw tantrums. And oddly enough, she always got the most attention. Once, before our wedding, Rachel told me that when they were teens, Kim threw a fit on her birthday because their parents bought Rachel a more expensive gift. Rachel got a camera. She wanted to study photography. And Kim got a pair of sneakers. The next day, Kim took the camera, threw it in the pool, and later said it was an accident. And the parents? They said it was just sibling jealousy. Still, over the years, I tried to get close to her. I invited her to dinners, birthdays, even bought presents for her kids. 3 adorable little ones, by the way. But Kim never treated me warmly. At best, she tolerated my presence. We'd see her during the holidays, at family lunches, and it was always the same thing. She'd arrive late, complain about life, the economy, her ex-husband, the kids, the traffic, the government. And then, when Rachel tried to change the subject, she'd bring up some childhood memory that, surprise, excluded me. Remember that summer in Maine, Rachel? When we hid in Grandma's basement during the storm? Remember when we made a doll theater and Dad filmed it all? Of course I didn't remember, but those were the moments when I felt like just a background prop, like I didn't exist, sitting at the table, listening to stories that were never mine. Even so, I invited her to join our trip. I paid for her to come. Because deep down, I thought maybe, just maybe, if she felt included, if she felt part of something, things would change. But I should have known. Because Kim doesn't accept kindness without suspecting a hidden agenda. Deep down, she always looks at every gesture like there's a catch, like anything anyone does is just to hold it over her head later. Rachel, on the other hand, always tried to see the best in her. She's just tired. She's had a tough life. She feels left out. Always a new excuse. But you know what? Everyone has problems. That doesn't give you the right to treat others like garbage. I remember once, 2 years ago, when we took Henry and Martha to Charleston. It was a beautiful, peaceful trip. We came back happy, with lots of amazing photos. When Kim saw them, she didn't even try to hide her frustration. "So nice you three got to go. Maybe one day I'll have a vacation too," I genuinely offered. "Next time, you come with us." She scoffed. "Oh, Mark, you say that now. But when the time comes, we all know you'll want your perfect couple moment and forget all about me." She said those things with venom in her voice, but always laughed at the end, like it was a joke. But it wasn't. It never was. And even after that, I insisted. Because I thought this time would be different. Because it was a family trip. Because Henry wanted this moment. Because I wanted to believe that, with the right setting, maybe we could find some harmony. But now, walking alone around this resort, holding my wife's beach bag while she poses for photos with her mom and sister, I keep thinking, when did I become the luggage guy on the vacation I paid for? There was one night, a few months before the trip, when Rachel and I had her parents over for dinner. The vibe was light, cheerful, and at one point, I asked if they had any special memories of Key West. Martha smiled, and with sparkling eyes told us about the day she and Henry rented a scooter and rode all around the island. Henry chuckled, saying he nearly fell off 4 times, but that it was the happiest day of their honeymoon. That's when Rachel said, "It'd be so lovely to relive that. Maybe we could take you there this year?" Martha placed her hand on her chest, visibly moved, and Henry simply nodded, a bit serious, and said, "It might be my last chance." The room fell silent after that. No one said a word, because everyone knew. That same week, I started planning everything. I booked the resort Henry had once mentioned in passing, a place with direct beach access, spacious rooms, elderly-friendly facilities, and a view that looked like a painting. When Rachel told me Kim wanted to come, I hesitated for a second, but eventually said, "If she can keep up with our pace, that's fine." Of course, she agreed, immediately, almost like she had just been waiting for the invitation. But from that very first camera click, right there on the resort patio, it was clear she hadn't come to be part of the group. She came to rewrite the family story, without me in it. I've always tried to understand Kim, I swear. Rachel told me that when they were kids, their parents were tougher on her. She wasn't as studious as Rachel and was always getting scolded. When Rachel won awards at school, Kim would roll her eyes and storm off to her room. Years ago, when I got a promotion at work and shared the news in the family group chat, she replied with a yawning emoji. Literally, no text, just that. At first, I thought it was funny. I figured maybe she just has a weird sense of humor. But no, Kim never saw me as family. I was the outsider, the foreign body contaminating the purity of the family unit she still pretended existed. Mom, dad, and daughters. And I watched Rachel constantly split herself in two, comforting me on one side, appeasing her sister on the other. Once, after a family lunch where Kim spent 40 minutes telling high school stories that completely excluded me, Rachel turned to me in the car and said, "I'm sorry, love. I know you feel left out sometimes." But sometimes was every gathering, every toast, every picture, every situation where Kim went out of her way to leave me out, with words, looks, or omissions. And the truth, I always swallowed it silently, because I thought it was the right thing to do. I thought her family needed peace, that Henry couldn't handle seeing his daughters fight, that Martha would cry, that Rachel would be caught in the middle. So I let it slide. Once, twice, 100 times. Deep down, I kept convincing myself that it was just a phase, that maybe next Christmas, she'd include me in a toast, that maybe at the next family lunch, she'd ask how my job was going. That never happened. And still, I brought this woman to Key West. I booked the flights. I chose the ocean view rooms. I wrote her name on the hotel check-in forms. All of it. Because deep down, I still wanted to believe she could change. That maybe, with the right family moment, we could break through that wall. But now I find myself sitting on a lobby bench, holding a bag full of towels and sunscreen, while the 3 girls head off to the spa for a day just for us. And the worst part is hearing my wife try to make it sound okay. "Honey, it's just some girl time. We'll do something just us 2 later, okay?" As if I were a child waiting my turn. As if this were all normal. What hurt me the most wasn't being excluded. It was how effortlessly Kim made it seem. natural, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world that I wasn't included. On Tuesday, we had planned a sunset boat ride. It was supposed to be peaceful, beautiful views, cocktails in hand, breeze on our faces. I was the first one up and down for breakfast. I woke up early to check with the front desk that the transportation was confirmed. All set. Everything was lined up. When we all got down to the dock, the guide explained that the boat seats were grouped in sets of 4. And before I could even open my mouth, Kim was already assigning seats. Mom and Dad together, of course, she said with a smile. And Rachel with me, right, sis? She turned to me and added, Mark, you can sit in the row behind us. It'll help balance the weight, you know? Balance. That was the word she used, as if it were just about symmetry. And the worst part? Henry and Martha just smiled, not picking up on anything. Rachel hesitated, gave me that, sorry, I'll fix it later look. I went, sat alone, in silence. And when the photos started, because of course there was a photographer on board selling printed pictures, guess who got left out of the image? Me. There was the perfect family posing in front of the sunset, and me behind them, slouching, drink in hand, blending into the boat's decor. I bought the photo anyway. I don't even know why. Maybe just to prove to myself that I wasn't imagining things, that it was really happening. The next night, we had a reservation at one of the island's top restaurants. I'd booked it weeks in advance, requested a seaside table, every detail perfectly arranged. When we arrived, the hostess led us to a round table for 6. Amazing view. Perfect spot. I could already picture the food, the breeze, maybe a shot at a moment of normalcy, but of course, Kim was quicker. She darted to the seat beside Rachel, settled in like she owned it, and called her parents to sit across from them, claiming the seats with the best view. What was left for me was the edge of the table, with a wall behind me and the clatter of the waiter station at my side. Rachel tried this time. Honey, do you want to sit next to me? Kim didn't even let her finish. Oh, come on, Rachel, don't be clingy. It's a family trip, not a honeymoon. He can handle sitting on the other side, right, Mark? She said it laughing, but her eyes were tight and cold. I looked at Rachel. Her face dropped, but she said nothing. Throughout the dinner, they started reminiscing about childhood stories again, the kind that made me feel like a spectator. Remember when Dad got locked out and you made him climb in through the kitchen window? Kim laughed. He almost fell into the bushes. And that time at camp? When you forgot the flashlight and we had to walk in the dark? Rachel was terrified, and there I was, forcing a smile, pretending to care about the inside jokes. I even tried to steer the conversation toward the wine, the live music, anything that might include me, but Kim always redirected it, always pulled Rachel back to the past, like she was trying to erase me from the picture right in front of everyone. When dessert came around, she suggested a mother and daughter's photo. Martha smiled, of course, always excited about pictures. I got up to take it, but as I picked up the phone, Kim said, "Oh, no need, Mark. The waiter can take it for us. You can stay seated." So I did. I sat and watched. The next day, we had a spa afternoon scheduled. 3 private suites. One for Rachel and me, another for her parents, and one just for Kim. But during breakfast, Henry said he wasn't feeling great. He wanted to rest by the beach. I thought, perfect. I'll stay with him. We'll talk. He could use some company. But Kim looked straight at me and said, "You really should stay with Dad, Mark. It'd be good for him. That way we can have a girls-only spa day. It's been so long since I've had a moment just with Mom." Rachel hesitated. I looked at her. I expected her to say no, to say she wanted to stay with me. But she just nodded and murmured, "It might be good for Dad, yeah." And off they went, the 3 of them in robes, giggling and gossiping down the hallway. And me, alone again, with Henry, lying on a lounge chair, eyes closed. Henry didn't say much that afternoon. We sat in silence for a while, just listening to the sound of the waves and the palm trees swaying in the breeze. Then he slowly opened his eyes, looked at me and asked, "You okay, Mark?" I faked it, gave him a crooked smile and said, "Of course, just tired, I guess." He nodded, but stared at me for a few seconds. A calm, yet penetrating look, like he knew, like he'd seen it. Maybe he had. We spent the afternoon like that, short conversations and long silences. He asked me about work, about my younger brother, even mentioned a book he'd been reading. He never brought up Rachel, Kim, or the girls at the spa, and honestly, I was thankful for that. But deep down, I couldn't stop thinking about one thing. I had paid for that spa. Every cent of that lavender-scented suite, the Swedish massages, the mineral salts Kim requested urgently because she needed to unwind. I funded all of it. and was treated like a support staffer. That evening at dinner, I tried to act normal. We were all on the hotel restaurant's patio, string lights overhead, dark wooden tables, romantic ambiance. Ironic, considering the tension in the air. Rachel noticed I was quiet. She tried to spark a conversation. "The food here is amazing, isn't it?" she said, placing her hand over mine. Kim, sitting next to her, rolled her eyes discreetly, but I caught it. "Oh, Rachel, please. You two are being so clingy. Is that really necessary?" Kim said, pointing to Rachel's hand on mine. "You've been married for 10 years. It's not a honeymoon anymore." No one replied. Henry cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable. Martha pretended to read the menu. I pulled my hand away, but this time, I didn't smile. Back in our room, Rachel hugged me from behind, trying to ease the tension. "She didn't mean to offend you, love. It's just how she is." I turned slowly, looked her in the eyes and said, "The way she is to erase me, and you're letting her." She took a deep breath, but didn't respond. She walked into the bathroom and locked the door. The next morning, while everyone was having breakfast, I sat alone in a corner, scrolling through my phone. When I got up for more coffee, I heard laughter coming from their table. Kim was telling a story from when she and Rachel were teens and went on a girls-only road trip with their parents. "We stayed in a roadside motel and swore it was haunted," she laughed. "Rachel had nightmares for days." Rachel laughed too, but when she looked at me, her smile faded and she looked away. I sat back down, silent again. Then Kim got up, grabbed her phone and said, "Let's take a picture now with these adorable mugs." They all gathered by the window, morning light streaming in. I knew. Even before anyone said a word, I knew. She looked at me over her shoulder and said, "Mark, can you take it for us?" That's all. She didn't ask if I wanted to be in it, didn't offer me a spot, just handed me the phone like it was my job, and like an idiot, I took it. I pressed the button, captured yet another moment that left me out. Later that day, when Rachel and I came back to our room to change for the bike ride, I found my favorite shirt on the closet floor, wrinkled under Kim's suitcase. "Huh? How'd this end up here?" I asked, holding it up. Rachel looked embarrassed. "Oh, last night Kim said she needed space for her things. I think she shoved your clothes down without noticing." Without noticing. Kim had her own suite, a massive room with a king bed, a balcony, and a walk-in closet, but she shoved my shirt under her suitcase, without noticing. I started laughing, a dry, strange laugh. Rachel got tense. "Are you okay?" "I'm great," I replied. "I'm finally starting to understand everything." We went on the bike tour that afternoon, one of those guided tours around town, stopping at historical sites and along the waterfront. 5 bikes lined up. I got there first, talked to the guide, confirmed the list. All good. But when everyone else arrived, Kim took charge, handing out helmets like she was running the event. She gave one to Rachel, one to the parents, one for herself, then looked at me and, as if she'd forgotten, said, "Oh, Mark, this one's left." She handed me the dirtiest one, scratched up, grimy. Rachel noticed. I saw it in her eyes, but she said nothing. Neither did anyone else. We mounted up. The guide started the route. I stayed in the back, on purpose. I didn't want to hear the conversations. I already knew they'd be about those unforgettable summers or Grandma Jean's stories from the farm, stories I had no place in. At one stop, the guide suggested a group photo in front of an old mansion. He asked, "Who wants to take it?" Kim, quick as always, pointed at me. "Our official photographer here," she said, laughing. "He loves it." She didn't even look at me, handed me Rachel's phone. And there I was, again, behind the camera, eyes squinting from the sun, throat dry from swallowing my frustration. After the photo, she came up to me as if to confide something. She leaned in and said in a soft but cutting tone, "You should get used to it. Not everyone needs to be in everything, you know." That hit me right in the gut. Not because of the words themselves, but because of how calmly she said it, like it was just a fact. Like my exclusion was natural, fair, expected. I pedaled back in silence, trying to keep my anger in check. When we got to the hotel, Martha suggested dinner at the resort's restaurant. Everyone agreed. I went up to the room first. I needed to breathe. In the room, I sat on the bed and stared at my suitcase. Everything was perfectly organized, just as I'd packed before the trip. Everything of mine was there. I had brought each item, each shoe, every medication. I had planned every detail, and still, I felt like a stranger. Rachel came in a few minutes later. "Ready to go down?" I nodded, grabbed my wallet, took a deep breath, and followed her. At the restaurant, the table was already set. This time, no one rushed to sit next to anyone. I ended up between Martha and Henry, which honestly was a relief. But Kim still seemed determined to prove who was in control. Mid-dinner, she started telling another family story, one that involved Rachel, herself, the parents, and a trip to Orlando when they were teens. Rachel had the biggest crush on the hotel lifeguard, she laughed, looking at Martha. That blonde guy in red trunks. She kept making excuses to go to the pool. Everyone laughed, even Rachel, a little embarrassed. I smiled too, trying not to show how awkward I felt. Then Kim added, "Back then we did everything together, right, Rach? Just the two of us, inseparable." And then she looked straight at me. With a fake little smile, she said, "Good times, huh?" Rachel quickly changed the subject, asked about dessert. Henry said he wanted to try the key lime pie. Kim grabbed the menu, looked it over, and said, "Too bad nothing's diet, right, Dad?" "Oh well, go ahead, we won't judge much." She let out a forced laugh. Henry chuckled awkwardly. I looked at her, trying to understand what joy she got out of it. The passive-aggressive jabs, the constant game of exclusion and humiliation. On the way to the elevators, Rachel tried to smooth things over. "Kim goes overboard sometimes, but she doesn't even realize it, you know?" I stopped, took a deep breath, and replied softly, "She realizes it. She knows exactly what she's doing. And so do you." Rachel went silent. She just looked at me with guilt she wasn't even trying to hide anymore. We rode the elevator in silence, but inside me there was no more silence. Update. Last night, something happened that shattered what little patience I had left. We had planned our final evening to be the most special of all. I had reserved a dinner at a beachfront restaurant, with live music and an amazing table overlooking the moonlit ocean. All I wanted was for it to be a peaceful night, for Henry and Martha to have one good memory from this trip. Just that. We all arrived dressed up. Rachel wore a blue dress I had picked out for her to bring, and Kim, as always, wore that smug little smile. The maitre d' led us to the table, and before anyone could say a word, Kim rushed to pull out the chair next to Rachel. "I'll sit here, Rach. That way we can get a cute picture together," she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I ended up on the opposite side of the table, stuck on the corner, with no view of the ocean at all. Rachel looked at me but didn't say anything. Maybe she was tired of arguing with her sister. And me? I just sat down. But inside, something was boiling. Throughout dinner, Kim did her usual performance. She took photos of herself and Rachel with each course, while I played the official photographer. Poor Martha tried to include me. "Mark, come sit by me for the next picture." But Kim would quickly cut in. "Oh, Mom, let's do just the four of us. It'll look cuter just like the old days." It was like hearing the same bad joke 1,000 times, except each time it cut deeper. And then, at dessert, it happened. I was sitting quietly, sipping my coffee, when Kim looked straight at me and said, "You know, sometimes I think Rachel misses when there weren't outsiders disrupting the vibe." My fork nearly slipped from my hand. Rachel froze. "Kim, cut it out," she said, clearly irritated. "What? What did I say?" Kim responded, wearing that fake smile. "I'm just saying things used to feel lighter." It was like every humiliation of the last several days collided in that one moment. That smile, that way she acted like I didn't belong at the table I paid for, on the trip that only happened because of me. It was too much. After dinner, we returned to the hotel. Rachel tried to talk to me, but I didn't want to hear it. My head was spinning. I spent hours out on the balcony, staring at the pool lights, thinking about everything I had swallowed in silence, and something changed in me that night. I decided I wasn't going to let this slide. Update 2, I did something I never thought I'd have the guts to do. On our last morning, I woke up before everyone else. While Rachel was still sleeping, I threw on a shirt, grabbed my wallet, and headed down to the hotel front desk. The plan was crystal clear in my mind. I wasn't angry anymore. This wasn't an impulse. It was something that had been building, photo after photo, snub after snub. It was logic, emotional justice maybe. At the front desk, I asked to speak with the manager, a polite man in a beige suit, soft Texas accent. I explained that, for tax and accounting purposes, I needed each suite's charges separated individually in the system. He nodded without question. "Of course, sir. That's not a problem at all." I held back a smile. "Perfect. I'd like to settle all charges for my suite and for my in-laws' suite." "And Ms. Kimberly's suite?" he asked, confirming on the screen. "Please transfer all of her charges to her room, including spa, minibar, room service, laundry, everything. And let her know that the balance must be paid in person at checkout." The manager raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He just typed calmly and nodded. "It will be done." I went back to the room with a coffee in hand, and a calmness I hadn't felt in days. Rachel was still getting ready. She asked, "Everything good with the hotel?" "All sorted," I said. 2 hours later, Rachel and her parents were heading down with their luggage. Henry needed assistance with a wheelchair, so I suggested they go on to the airport ahead of us. "I'll stay with Kim," I said. "There's something I need to handle at the hotel." Rachel looked at me, suspicious. "You're planning something?" "You know I am," I said firmly. "And I hope you stay just as neutral as you've been this whole trip." She didn't respond, just grabbed her suitcase and left with her parents. I went up to Kim's room and knocked on the door. She opened it in a hotel robe, towel on her head, sipping a fancy juice. "Are we leaving already?" she asked, not even inviting me in. "It's checkout time. You need to head down. The manager wants you to sign your sweet paperwork." She frowned. "Why? Didn't you already pay for everything?" "I paid for my family. You can cover your own part." She stared at me for a few seconds. I kept my face cold. "You're kidding, right?" "Not at all. You treated me like a stranger this entire trip, so it's only fair you handle your own expenses." At first, I thought she'd laugh, but no. Her face hardened. She turned red, grabbed her purse and phone, and stormed down after me. At the front desk, the manager handed her the invoice. With each line he read aloud, her face changed colors. Spa, room service, laundry, makeup delivery, minibar drinks, hot stone massage, pillow upgrades. The total was high. Way higher than she expected. "This can't be right. You were supposed to pay this, Mark," she said, leaning over the counter. "I paid for what made sense. You wanted luxury? Then you can pay the price." She tried her credit card. Declined. Tried another. Declined. Looked at me. I just crossed my arms and stared back in silence. People around us started to take notice. Some guests watched discreetly. A couple even took off their sunglasses to see better. Kim was sweating. She tried a third card. Partially approved. Still far from covering the full amount. "I'll pay when I get home," she shouted. "This isn't a tab," the manager said calmly. "The balance must be paid now." She looked at me in pure panic. The first real crack in that armor of superiority she'd worn all week. "Mark, please. You know I don't have this kind of money right now." I took a deep breath. I was prepared to pay Kim. All you had to do was treat me like part of the family. All it would have taken was an apology. She hesitated, but didn't say anything. She just grabbed her phone and called her husband. "I need you to transfer—" "Yes, now. It's important." Mark refused to pay the hotel. "Yes, that Mark." I turned to the manager. "Please arrange a taxi for the airport once she's finished. I won't be waiting." Her husband took a while, a solid 20 minutes. Kim stood there in the lobby, arms crossed, foot tapping nervously, exchanging awkward glances with anyone who passed by. It was like watching an ego balloon slowly deflate in front of everyone. She tried to hold on to what little dignity she had left, pretended to text, probably to look busy. This was a woman who just 2 days ago strutted around the resort like a reality show star, now begging for a Venmo. The manager glanced at me, as if asking whether he should intervene. I just leaned back on the couch and crossed my legs. She'll figure it out. She just needs to deal with it like an adult. When the money finally came through, she didn't thank me, didn't even look at me. She snatched the receipt from the receptionist and marched toward the door with her head high, but her red face said it all. The taxi pulled up, and she got in without a word. I could have ridden with her, but I didn't want to. I called Rachel and told her I'd meet them at the airport. About 40 minutes later, I arrived at the terminal. From a distance, I saw Kim at the check-in line, alone, struggling with her bags. She asked something at the counter, and judging by the attendant's gesture toward the clock, she was late. Probably missed her priority boarding. Too bad. I walked over to Rachel and her parents, who were seated near the gate. When Rachel saw me, she stood and came over. "You made her pay?" "Yes, with her own money." "She's freaking out," Rachel whispered. "She said you humiliated her, that she had to call her husband for help, and that she's going to tell my parents everything on the flight." I looked Rachel in the eyes and said calmly, "Good. They need to know what happened. Every detail." Rachel didn't reply. We sat back down. Martha offered me a bottle of water. Henry gave me a slight nod. Maybe they didn't know the whole story, but they knew enough. At boarding, I handed our boarding passes to the attendant. He smiled. "Oh, you've all been upgraded to business class, courtesy of the mileage program." "All 4 of us?" I asked, pointing at Rachel and her parents. "Yes, the 4 names listed. Please remove hers," I said without hesitation. "Just us." He raised an eyebrow, confused, but followed the instruction. Rachel nudged me gently, but didn't say anything. By then, even she seemed to understand. There was no going back. We boarded the plane. The seats were spacious, comfortable. Champagne already poured. Martha was thrilled. Henry adjusted his seat slowly, but with a tired, satisfied smile. A few minutes later, I saw Kim walking down the narrow economy aisle, frowning as she looked for her seat. She saw us, saw the wide seats, the drinks, the smiles, and for the first time, she didn't cause a scene. She just looked away and kept walking, holding her purse tight to her chest. Mid-flight, Rachel looked at me with a mix of sadness and relief. "You know this will have consequences, right?" "I know, but if I let it slide again, I'd have lost respect for myself." She nodded. There was no more debate. Hours later, after we landed, Henry put his arm around my shoulders and said, "You did what needed to be done, son." That meant more than any apology ever could. But Kim wasn't finished yet. As soon as she stepped into the arrivals hall, she stormed over to her parents and started yelling, pointing straight at me. "He abandoned me at the hotel. He humiliated me, made me pay everything on my own. This is abuse, Mom. Rachel, you're not gonna say anything?" Martha took a step back, took a deep breath, and answered with a calmness that sounded like it had been rehearsed. "Kim, we saw what you did the entire trip. You spent the whole time treating Mark like a stranger. He paid for this entire vacation, and you still excluded him. Now deal with the consequences." Kim's jaw dropped. She tried to come up with something, but Henry cut her off. "Enough, Kim. He's done more for this family than you have in years." She looked at all of us, furious, but no one else said a word. And for the first time, her silence spoke louder than all the snide comments she had ever thrown. In the days that followed, the tension still hung in the air. Rachel and I went back home without saying much to each other, but it wasn't a bad silence. It was the kind that comes after a storm, when everything finally settles. Kim tried to turn her parents against me for a while, but it didn't work. Martha and Henry were tired of her manipulation, and for the first time, they didn't take her side. They just pulled away. What I did came at a price. I knew that. I still know. But it was a price that finally set me free. She painted me as the villain to anyone who would listen. Her husband, her friends, even on social media. But everyone who saw the photos from the trip, everyone who was actually there, knew exactly who she really was. I didn't have to defend myself. The truth did it for me. Rachel stood by my side. She admitted she should have defended me more, said she learned a lesson she'll never forget. Our marriage grew stronger because for the first time, I didn't erase myself for anyone else. And as for Kim, well, she ended up getting divorced a few months later. Her husband got tired of the debt and the drama. She moved in with a friend and, according to Martha, still goes around saying the whole world is against her. But for the first time, no one's applauding anymore. These days, I walk with lightness, with self-respect, with my dignity intact.